Heavy realities don't let us rise. It is not how it works. If the heart is heavy, he is unable to get things from above. Now, if he is throwing away daily the garbage he will store, with the relationships he has, with the realities they weigh, being hurt, difficult for him, he is doing this recycling in everyday life, and he continues fit to things from above. That's how it works. There is no other way, my people. Have you ever stopped to think that many times in your life do you get your human growth because you lack lightness? Sometimes only dealing with the other. It is very difficult for us to relate to a person who is heavy all the time, who has a bag of trouble and makes a point of breaking up these problems all the time on the others. Forget your problems a little. Talk about other things. Be lighter to the other. Throw away your excesses. Allow God to be in your heart. It's so good when you are surprised by the lightness of your heart, you know? With that happiness, as Guy Moran's Rosa said, happiness happens to us. Happiness are hours of carelessness. That's when you are not even realizing, and suddenly that lightness takes over your heart. No reason, and you feel happy. This is the result of spiritual growth. Daniela. That I need to achieve. That we all need. So the Christian life is always a light that makes us honest with us. There are situations that the other can never give me. The other can never give me. There are situations that only I can reach. There are things that I don't have the right to ask each other. I need to offer myself. It is no longer hypocritical with yourself, that sometimes we are being hypocritical with each other. And suddenly we fail to realize that we are being hypocritical with ourselves. And that is the most harmful lie. That's when you lie to yourself. That's when you play a lies truck daily that you don't even believe. Nonsense garbage. Save yourself. This, my people, is an honesty that makes a lot of difference these days. Because people are very lazy spiritually. They are very emotionally unprepared. And immaturity all the time. It starts to be more realistic, starts to be more true with you. You deserve this honesty. Sometimes you are not being loved is because you are being too boring. There are a lot of people too boring all the time, and thinks the other has to be carrying the facts that are hers. No, I have no obligation to carry the facts that are yours. I can even help you in many things. I do not have the right to judge my facts about the other. So I'm not light, I do not make a point of being light, and I want the other to take me in the back. Lack spiritual life in our lives, there is matter. You can see, we occupy our time with material realities, with material situations, and we lack that time reserved for the construction of the spirit. To this intimate life that only God can give us. This is spiritual life. When you expect time to bring you the answer, you will untie your anxieties and get rid of having the answers all at that time, and you allow you to live. I want to experience the stripping of not having the answer today. I want to learn to sleep a few days with the question, why did this happen? I don't know, but it happened. And no may not even answer. Sometimes the answer responds nothing. Why? Because the heart is looking for another answer, which will only be formulated after a long time, far from those losses that made me suffer so much. Because of course you have the right to love your home. Really, love. Beware. Who loves establishes a bond that puts us from the perspective of caring, of valuing. Of course. It is different the love you have for the house of love you have for your child. Because there is a reciprocity there. Loving a person is different from having a love for a structure. But it is no problem to say that we have a love for the structure where we live. We identify with those walls, with those curtains, with that smell, don't we? It's so good when we, after a trip back home, and you smell your home, the smell of your bed, The smell of your wardrobe is so pleasant. So there is a whole set of meanings that makes you feel harmonized. This is love. So you see, when I am willing to take care of my spiritual life, another thing I am not doing, but take a step to mean this material life of my life, so that it helps me to find spiritual riches. And it is interesting because we start to make a growth path that will be able to value what is material, but at the same time do not cling to disorderly way to what is material. But of course, if there are no people who love you, who receive you, who welcome you, this material wealth does not have much sense. So as we make this advance in the spiritual life, which is the cultivation of these high realities, which St. Paul says, when we start taking care that the petty realities, the realities that throw us to the floor, you start to get high, and you will value the matter in a different way. So spiritual life is this opportunity that we have to change our perspectives. So when I interpret even the loss of a loved one as an opportunity to recruit strength, courage, disposition, faith, I am giving a spiritual dimension to that material loss. Because the loss of a person is also matter. It is the body that ceases talking around the house, is the body that no longer sits at the table to take meals with you. It is the body you stop hugging, that you stop caring, which stops sleeping next door. It has a whole material dimension. And of course, there is the affective, psychic, spiritual dimension that you will manage together later. It's all at once. And it is interesting because I identify that the spiritual life, what is the thermometer you have to know if you have already reached a growth or not? Let's say I want to analyze the growth I had spiritually speaking in the last year. This was a heavy year. It was a difficult year for me. So I noticed that I made spiritual growth from the difficulties that were myself. Even the breakups, which were at first painful, then they proved to be a really personal liberation experience. It's not that the other is bad. It's not that the person was bad. No, it is you who will be able to recognize that you need to take steps of autonomy, inner freedom, and to put people in the right place until you love them better. It may be that at first, what gives us the most, what is hard to manage, be this physical loss. It is the other who ceased to exist. It's the other who stopped living, being here by my side. But finally, we cannot measure the size of a loss, how much we lose at the moment loses. It's impossible. This account never closes. Now that life's difficulties, material losses, help us build a well, solidified, spiritual life. I have no doubt that this maturity is only possible as we are giving a spiritual dimension to loss. I see all the time happening by my side people who have established fantastic growth in their spiritual life because they could manage their losses and limits. It's impressive, my people. The person allows this to happen because sometimes we are so tied to our pain, and there is a fact that sometimes also hurts us a lot, which is that obligation to suffer that sometimes we have. There are people who could have overcome the mourning for a long time, but think they can't. You are afraid of what the other will think, is afraid of how the other goes. Wow. She has lost a son. And she is already in this joy. So we are so tied to what the other is thinking about us, which we often do not allow ourselves to give this advance in the spiritual life. Because we are tied into these petty. Because how can we analyze a spiritually higher person? That's when she is better prepared to lose. If you want to know how I know that a person is spiritually high, it is the ability that person has to lose materially. It may seem like a contradiction, but it is not. That happens spiritually last year. My growth, my maturity, was closely linked to what too lost. Not what I won. I got a lot. It was a year of many gains. I did important projects in my life, but I lost a lot. I didn't learn much the moment I won. I learned a lot the moment I lost. Father, I lost my son and see no advantage in losing my son. I only see damage. Yes, me too. The moment I see a mother mourning the death of her son, I only see damage. But it will talk to this mother a while later. The pain of losing his son did not change. You may have changed the longing. It gets lighter. Time will help cure, but it begins to achieve some dimensions of your heart that suffering could only do. Then, suddenly, she discovers so many dimensions of her life that you identify that that child blew a life in that woman at the time of pain. How can we advance in a spiritual life? Identifying in what is material life, which can be a mirror for my spiritual life, or what can be an impulse. So we are all the time surrounded by the story. We have no way to escape this matter. You are involved in your work, your friends, your social life context. You are in your college. You are in school. Finally, we all have this context of material life that surrounds us. So, the damage at first, it can be harmful to us, it can cause us a lot of suffering, but after time goes by, you look at him and say, good, I'm glad I lost at that time. Glad at that moment my floor was removed. Why? Because it may be that that floor was attaching me to him. Glad you had to give up what was so hard to give up at that moment. Once time goes by, you look and realize that it was fundamental for your human growth to have lived that uninstall that loss had caused. But according to the lifestyle, with the time we go to dedicated to situations, it may be that I spend much of my time taking care of the matter, too involved with material issues, and without much time to cultivate a life spiritual, an effective life, which is all this dimension that is not visible, that I cannot feel, but that makes me stand up. It's the breath that makes me stand up, right? This is interesting. Anima, soul. That's it. It's the breath that makes a reality live. Then you see the power of this religious discourse concrete in your life that convinces us that it is good for us to drop what weighs on us behind. Spiritual life, in whatever religion, if this religion is committed to love for God and respect for the human being, it will not propose anything but to assume these values, thought make us lighter and detached. Do you know why? It is much easier for us to establish a community life, a life in civility in a city, for example, when people are light, when people are more centered, when people are more harmonized. Religion should be a harmonizing process. Should give us daily, by religious practice, the ability to make us lighter. Every time we want to search for the spiritual life, we need to identify situations that are material, which are part of our routine, and often have the power to tie our spiritual life. I'm not saying here that matter opposes the spirit. See, a church, for example, which is material, may well help me to pray. I have that material reality as a starting point for my spiritual life. Only that church. It is not the end point of my spiritual life. What that church will tease in me is here, inside my heart, in my head. It will manage a way of being it. This is all spiritual life, my people. Because the spiritual life, in fact, is the reading you do of everything that material life causes you. So you may well live material losses and do not read it, and then you do not have spiritual growth. Or you may lose materially, read this material loss, and grow spiritually. As we bid farewell on Path of Faith, we extend our heartfelt gratitude for your presence. Keep the conversation going by commenting below, liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel for more soul-nourishing messages.